Well, I sat down with the Prime Minister this morning to speak about those political divisions, but we stopped it on the pressing foreign policy question, British intervention in Iraq. Looking back at, I don't know, the interventions of the last 2.5 decades, Iraq, Sierra Leone, Libya, Afghanistan, what's the success rate, do you think? I mean, what sort of hit rate are we getting?
Well, I think you have to look at each individual case. I would argue the ones where I've been particularly involved, I'm happy to defend. I think Afghanistan, not something I started, but something I've been involved in finishing, will leave that country in a much better state than we found it. But where I think we'd be drawing the wrong lesson is we thought that the difficulties with these interventions meant that Britain should somehow turn entirely away from the world. The reason why we have sometimes to get involved is that otherwise these issues come and bite us here back at home. It was terrorism on the streets of Britain that caused us to be involved in Afghanistan. The same, I would say, applies in the case of Iraq today. I think we should have a very national security focus. One of the things I brought is this National Security Council that brings together the domestic concerns about security and terrorism with foreign policy. That is the prism through which we should see these things.
Right, but the one that was purely yours, really, was Libya, wasn't it? Now, do you think, looking at Libya, that we left that country, having ousted Gaddafi, we left it in a better state than it was?
Well, we left it in a better state in that we enabled the Libyan people to do something they wanted to do, which was to get rid of Gaddafi. But you have to go back to why did we intervene? We were facing a situation where there was going to be a humanitarian catastrophe. Gaddafi was bearing down on Benghazi, threatening to kill the people like rats. We intervened on a humanitarian basis to help stop that happening. That intervention then led to the end of Gaddafi. Now, of course, the state of Libya today is not good. I completely accept that. But our responsibility was to help the Libyan people in that hour of need. We did that. We now need to help them, but it must be them in the lead to try and sort out proper governance for their country.
If you said to the population of Britain, if Syria, or the current effort in Iraq and the West in Syria and Iraq, if that current effort is as successful as we were in Libya, I would be a happy Prime Minister and I would say we were right to get involved. I mean,
no, of course not, of course not. But these are these are quite different situations. In Iraq and Syria today, we see a terrorist organisation that has taken control effectively of a state that has huge amounts of munitions, has huge amounts of oil, huge amounts of money, and it has already been carrying out terrorist plots and trying to carry out terrorist plots in Britain. This is a direct threat to us. So there isn't really a walk-on-by option, even if we wanted to.
Well, have we got a strategy in Syria?
Yes, we do.
Well, a strategy that isn't that we hope the Free Syrian Army will come back from nowhere.
We have a strategy for the whole of Iraq and Syria. And if you want, I can run through it in detail. But it starts with action at home in terms of keeping our own people safe, stopping people from travelling, making sure our anti-terrorism laws are as strong as they can be. It involves working with other countries, working with partners in the region, building up local forces so they can take on ISIL. Look, some people say it can't be a strategy if all you're doing in Iraq or Syria is airstrikes, because where are the boots on the ground? Which I would answer, well, it's better, isn't it, if the boots on the ground are local boots on the ground, even though that may take more time.
But there aren't local boots on the ground, or there aren't enough of them.
Well, in Iraq,
the Sunnis, if anything, are uniting around ISIS.
Well, let's deal with both countries. I mean, in Iraq, there is the Iraqi security forces. Yes, they need to be built up.
Well, as we spent years building them up, and they need to be the first sign of fighting.
But at the end of the day, you know, the only way you can make these countries safe is by those countries themselves taking responsibility for their governance and their security. As the Ban Ki-moon said, you know, a missile can kill a terrorist, but in the end it is only good governance that can kill terrorism. So Iraq and Syria need the same thing, which is functioning government that backs the whole of the country with functioning armed forces that are backed by the whole of the country. Now, and you may say that's impossibly difficult to deliver.
What is the strategy for delivering that? I'm not sure it's in our power to deliver functioning government to Syria and Iraq, is it?
It is in our power
any more than Libya.
It is in our power to help train up Iraqi security forces, and that needs to happen. It's in our power to help train up Kurdish forces, and that's in our power. And in Syria, we are, with the Americans, helping to build up the Syrian national opposition, who should provide a counterpoint to the unacceptable, illegitimate regime, And in time, I believe there'll be a transition from that regime to one that can better represent the whole country. If you're saying this is difficult, yes. It will take time, yes, absolutely. There are lots of ways in which it can go wrong, of course. But the threat to our country is such that actually, even though it's complicated, difficult, and needs a comprehensive plan, is not a reason for walking away.
Let's go on to domestic politics.